long-term or relatively permanent unemployed Americans. Declining job prospects for African Americans during the second half of the 20th century exacerbated segregation and poverty in the neighborhoods where displaced Southern agricultural workers congregated. As 2 million white residents left cities for suburban areas, 1.5 million Black Americans migrated to industrial centers in the North and West, joined by Latinos and white Appalachians, and moved into the neighborhoods previously occupied by European immigrants and their children. By the early 1960s, 31% of African Americans lived in 12 northern cities, their living conditions characterized by the isolation, marginalization, and exclusion that stemmed from segregation. Policymakers and public figures worried about the concentrations of African American citizens in cities like Cleveland, Detroit, New Orleans, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and St. Louis, where African Americans represented at least a third of the total population, and in the nation's capital, where African Americans were already a majority. The building up of a mass of unemployed and frustrated Negro youth in congested areas of a city is a social phenomenon that may be compared to the piling up of inflammable material in an empty building on a city block. Harvard's President Emeritus James B. Conant told a group of federal policymakers and businessmen at a conference on unemployed, out-of-school urban youth in May 1961. Conant went on to describe this demographic as social dynamite, a phrase that was picked up by the mainstream press to generate support for new federal programs intended to remedy the situation. The growing hardcore of those in urban communities, the nationally syndicated columnist Ralph McGill warned, are indeed potential social dynamite, requiring emergency attention. For Kennedy officials, too, the lack of jobs available to Black urban youth was potentially the most dangerous social condition in America today, as Secretary of Labor Arthur J. Goldberg put it in the spring of 1961. President Kennedy hoped the radical new social programs his administration developed that targeted low-income urban African Americans would effectively diffuse the social dynamite before it exploded into chaos. Kennedy and his advisors recognized the limitations of civil rights laws alone to address historical inequality. Acknowledging the shortcomings of his own proposed civil rights legislation, Kennedy argued before Congress in 1963, "There is little value in a Negro's obtaining the right to be admitted to hotels and restaurants if he has no cash in his pocket and no job." In the tradition of the Freedmen's Bureau, which the federal government established in 1865 to foster the inclusion of former slaves in public institutions and improve social conditions in the former Confederate states, Kennedy called for a massive upgrading of public schools and created programs that would stimulate literacy, provide vocational training programs, and improve access to secondary education, health care, and public benefits. These measures would focus explicitly on African Americans and other groups who had been largely excluded from Social Security provisions and the federal housing and education programs that primarily benefited white veterans and their families under the New Deal and the terms of the GI Bill. Instead of implementing various job training, education, and equal opportunity programs as such, the Kennedy administration framed its urban social programs as anti-delinquency measures. In the spring of 1961, Kennedy convened the President's Committee on Juvenile Delinquency and Youth Crime, chaired by Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy and including the Secretaries of Labor and Health, Education, and Welfare, and a selected group of advisors. With funding and broad discretion under the terms of the Youth Offenses Control Act of 1961, the President's Committee focused its programs almost explicitly on Black youth, emphasized prevention as a key goal in controlling crime, and included social scientists in policy discussions. The Kennedy administration's delinquency prevention programs departed significantly from previous initiatives at all levels of government and laid the groundwork for the social welfare and community uplift programs that the Johnson administration went on to initiate. Among other novel social programs the President's Committee developed, its early childhood education and manpower development programs evolved into Head Start and the Job Corps during Johnson's War on Poverty. Whereas the Kennedy administration launched these social welfare measures as crime control initiatives, Johnson presented his administration's attempt to suppress the social dynamite in African American urban neighborhoods as a larger, more expansive fight against poverty. Yet, in a moment of possibility for both racial